interesting article from Common Dreams from a couple days ago. Let's take a look. Billionaire Jeff Gundlach told fellow wealthy investors late Tuesday that Senator Bernie Sanders is the odds-on favorite to win the 2020 Democratic presidential nomination and warned the senator's potential general election victory could pose a serious threat to Wall Street profits. Quote, Bernie is stronger than people think, Gundlach, who correctly predicted Donald Trump's defeat of Hillary Clinton in 2016's presidential election, said during his annual Just Markets webcast. Gundlach, CEO of investment firm Double Line Capital, said Sanders' possible win over Trump in November represents the biggest risk to financial markets. I think it's Bernie Sanders becoming more believed in as a real force, and we have to start taking him more seriously, Gundlach said. If people get more worried about Bernie Sanders and they start to price in his spending programs, and he could really start to see trouble in both long-term treasury bonds and stocks, which could really be on a rough ride. Asked by CNN reporter Ryan Nobles about Gundlach's assessment of the 2020 race, Sanders' communication director Mike Kasica offered a snappy response. A stopped Rolex is right twice a day. Gundlach's remarks came as Democratic establishment is reportedly growing increasingly concerned about the prospect of a Sanders nomination as the Vermont senator outraises his primary opponents and gains grounds in early state polls. Quote, Bernie Sanders has just pulled even with Joe Biden in Iowa and is beating him in New Hampshire, giving Sanders a reasonable claim to being either the front-runner or the co-front-runner of the 2020 Democratic nomination. Current Affairs editor Nathan Robinson, a vocal supporter of the Vermont senator, wrote Wednesday, quote, Bernie has struck fear into the heart of the establishment, and even more moderate commentators like Chris Cillizza have noticed that Sanders is in very good position now. Robinson added, Bernie Sanders has also a strong case to make that he is the most electable candidate in a race against Donald Trump. So kind of interesting, the billionaire class, the, moneyed interest, big capital, big money in the U.S. is realizing, that Bernie Sanders has a very good shot of being the Democratic nominee and then, going on to defeat Donald Trump to becoming the, next president of the U.S. and they're worried. They're worried that a Sanders administration would cut into their wealth to fund things like free college and a Green New Deal and all of these other progressive policies that were deeply needed. But you can't really have a just and equitable society with so much wealth inequality, and Bernie realizes that, and so these billionaires and the oligarchic class are concerned, that their profit margins would shrink a little bit under a Sanders, administration. So they're worried, and they're gonna use everything, all of their power and resources to make sure that doesn't happen. And we already have a couple of billionaires in the Democratic race who are trying to, buy the nomination, that being Michael Bloomberg and Tom Steyer. And then, the Trump campaign obviously, tries to use that fake populism of the right to say that they are for the working people and they have the best interest of the working people in mind. But obviously we know clearly that's definitely not the case. Just look at all of the, policies that Trump has supported once in office, like the USMCA or NAFTA 2.0, or look at all of the tax breaks he gave to the wealthy and the big corporations that run for perpetuity, and then the tax breaks to lower income and middle income Americans have a sunset clause. And additionally, it's like 83% of the tax breaks from Trump's tax cuts went to the top 1%. These are just a couple examples. There's a lot of other ones, but Bernie has the strongest case to make that he's been clear and consistent for decades on his support for the working people of the United States, for the working class of the world, and he would he's our best shot of making gains for the working class in the United States, and the billionaire class is scared of that because they've been doing really well while everybody else has been suffering and struggling. It's like at least 50% of Americans are living basically paycheck to paycheck and couldn't afford like a $500 emergency. If something came up, they wouldn't be able to afford that. So the for the billionaire class, things are going really well. Their wealth has continued to increase, while everybody else's standard of living has declined, pretty substantially in a lot of ways. And Bernie wants to right that ship. He wants to get rid of the extreme inequality that we have and make it a more fair and just society that where everybody is able to prosper and do well and get an education and not go into huge amounts of debt, have health care, not have to worry about going bankrupt or dying without lack of access to health care, and just all of these other policies that benefit the working people. So yeah, the billionaire class is rightfully scared of a Bernie Sanders 2020 nomination because they see all the power and momentum that he has behind him. Not me, us, Bernie 2020. Peace, peace, peace. Power to the people.